Hello and welcome to the AVForums Podcast for Monday the 27th of April. And joining me in this edition, Steve Withers.
Soon, Kalimar will rule the world.
Ed Selley.
Are you trying to develop a sense of humour, or am I going deaf?
Kaz Harlow.
No more parachutes.
And Mark Botwright.
Hold on to your potatoes.
Right, so just a heads up before we get into the podcast, we are doing a video podcast this coming week.
Well, we're going to try it out.
We are testing it out. We're going to test it out with a Q&A session, and we're going to do that at 7:15 on the 30th of April. The reason it's 7:15 is it's going to take us 15 minutes to get everything set up and make sure it's all working. But this is going to be...
You start at 6:45 then?
Well, that means that you have to get there earlier. I was thinking of you, not having to get there earlier.
7:15 is better.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Means Ed can have a couple more beers. So it's going to be a live test of the podcast as a video call. If you send us some questions in about anything, really, I mean, it doesn't have to be AV. It would help if it was AV, because obviously that's what we know. But, you can send us questions on anything.
Send in your theological questions.
Yeah, why not? And we'll have a go at trying to...
we'd simply reply, that would be an ecumenical matter.
And the way to do this is the live stream. It's not going to be on our main YouTube channel because, like we say, this is just a test. So we're going to do it on the AVForums Podcast channel. You'll find that on YouTube, or we'll put a link into the thread for this podcast in the forums. So you have to go AVForums Podcasts and look at the thread for this podcast. We'll have a link in there so you can find us. You can put your questions in that thread, and we'll go through the thread beforehand, and at least we'll be pre-prepared then. We might have some answers for you. Or you can put your questions into the live chat window next to the live stream as it goes live. We've tried this a couple of times.
It hasn't been a complete disaster.
It hasn't been a complete disaster. It hasn't been great either. I've had to reconfigure my desk here.
The early test shots, Phil appeared to be 3'6".
Yeah, and I'm actually 4'6". So I've had to reconfigure my whole desk. I've had to take it to bits, have the monitor, because I've got an iMac, and obviously the iMac, it's a 27-inch screen, and the video camera's right at the top, and it was sitting on a pedestal that was raised up, so like the guys were saying, I was like miles away from the camera. We've had little issues like that, so we're going to try and fight through them. We haven't seen Kaz or Mark on camera yet.
Does this mean I've got to find some kind of like a background in my house that doesn't look like a bomb site?
Well, technology.
Blur background.
You can blur it, yeah.
You can blur out your background, so people can then try and figure out what's behind you.
I mean, to be fair, it's not bulletproof. So, I mean, if, for example, you've got like severed human limbs on the wall, there's gonna be some.
Put the GIMP away.
I'm suggesting it's not bulletproof, Mark. So some discretion.
So we are going to try this out. A few people have asked for this in the past. The technology's there. We may as well try it and see how things go. So we're going to do them as Q&A to start with, and if it is popular, if people like it, if it works slick and it's easy to do, then we could move over to doing the podcast as video. If you listen to us on iTunes and while you're walking the dog and that kind of thing, don't panic. There will still be an audio version of it. It just won't be as slick and well recorded. It'll be lots more ums and ahs and so on, because we will be doing it live. Whereas I've got time to clean these up, record these as live, but I can then take out libelous things that people say.
I was going to say in the slander edit.
Yeah, so that is coming up this week. We would like you to get involved. If you like the podcast, if you want to see us go to video, if you want to see what it looks like or what we look like.
Why?
I don't know. But
I know apparently people do, but why? If we had someone who was known to be attractive amongst our retinue, then...
Well, I mean, we can put anything we like up there. I mean, there is one thing that you can do where you can turn everybody into animated characters if you want.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, so that's 7:15 on the 30th of April, so the last day of the month. We're going to try that out. Q&A, it'll be an hour long, no longer than that, because like I say, it's just a test. We're going to go through it. So please get involved, come along and try it out as we try it out. And obviously there will be mistakes and stuff, and audio might not be great here and there, because that seems to be the issue we're having at the moment, is the audio. It's not 100%. So anyway, fingers crossed. As always, as well, our thanks once again to frontline workers who are working incredibly hard in the health services and in all the other places that are keeping the country going at the minute. Thank you once again to everybody that is doing that. It is appreciated from everybody on the podcast. And what have we been doing this week? Well, I have to admit that I am now starting to climb the walls a little bit. And it's been mainly over the weekend, to be honest. During the week, there's loads going on. I've got plenty to do, and this is fairly normal for me. I spend most of my time indoors working and so on. But I have to say, because I can't get out, even just for an hour or so, and go and do my other hobby, which is the car stuff, or even just go where I want to go, I'm really it's starting to get to me now a little bit, mentally, more than anything else. It's just and I thought I'd be a bit better than I am handling that. So yesterday, I went out in the car for no reason. It wasn't essential. I went up and I washed the car. And then I
did that on Friday.
And then I went the long way home. Now, my excuse is that my car's been sitting out in the street. It's been getting dirty and filthy, and it could ruin the paint. So I am protecting my property by going and washing it, because I can't wash it in the street for obvious reasons, because the doctor on the telly told us we can't do that. And I went the long way home because it's a nice day, window down, exhaust in loud mode, over the dales and down through the country lanes and back home that way. So I'll put my hands up. I did that, and I felt 100 times better just by doing that. I didn't get in anybody's way. I didn't get out the car. When I was washing the car, I used gloves and disposed of them straight after using the thing. I know all about cross-contamination in a previous life. So I didn't get in anybody's way. I didn't cause any issues, but I needed to do it. I just felt I needed to do that. And I'm putting my hands up to it and saying...
I last washed my car in September.
Yeah, but even during normal times, you never wash your car, Ed.
No. I don't. It's going to rain tomorrow. It's fine.
Yeah. So, Steve, you said you'd gone and washed your car.
I did. I washed it on Friday because there was a layer of dust on top of the car, basically.
So it's Saharan sand from the desert.
Is it?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, it's also just quite dusty. Yeah. It hadn't really. It basically, apart from the odd trip to the garage to buy some food, it's basically been sitting there for at least the last 5 weeks.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm getting 3 weeks to the gallon at the minute.
So yeah, I thought I'd give it, but it backfired slightly because it was really hot it's been really hot for the last few days, but because it was so hot, I'd wash the car and then the water would dry before I had a chance to polish it up. Really difficult to actually I got it clean, but getting it polished up was really not easy. I'll have to wait till it's more temperate and a bit wetter, and then do that bit.
Proper car people, I'm not including Ed in this because Ed's never washed his car, but you never wash your car in the sunshine. Ever. Always wash it in the shade, because, like you say, it dries too quickly and you get water marking and so on, because it's not a pH neutral water that you're using either. So there you go. That's why you get water marks.
Definitely not here. No, it's very acidic. It's like
I always
bathing.
thought that was one of those old wives'
acid.
tales. Yeah,
What?
like doing your silver with a stick of rhubarb or something, never washing windows in the sun.
No, you never wash anything in sunlight, ever.
But what about the blokes on like the outside of the Shard?
Yeah, I think that's a bit different. And that'll have special glass as well, I think.
Special glass?
Does it not have self-cleaning glass?
Doesn't sound like you're the expert you claim to be.
I'm no expert on anything, even what I'm supposed to be expert on. Right, Ed, what have you been up to?
Well, as you might be surprised to learn, I haven't been doing a huge amount. I've been doing some work. I successfully did cooked a big batch of pulled pork up using my slow cooker. I usually just used to use my barbecue, but obviously that remains some distance away from my house, and due to social distancing, I can't go and get it. So I was able to get it done in the slow cooker, which went all right. Otherwise, it's just been more of the same. I don't know. I think I went through my wall climbing phase earlier than you, and I'm now into just acceptance. I'm still craving the pub, and I'm still craving.
Yeah, and that's going to be the last thing that gets lifted is the pub.
That depends how much stuff the government wants to be on fire, doesn't it? Because fundamentally, we are there. There's interestingly, seemingly, given the spread of publications that articles of this nature have appeared in, we've now moved on to the okay, great. We've not got people dying from COVID-19, but what are the costs, incremental costs, now being accepted in doing that? And they range from people giving outlandish, we're all going to eat each other if we're not allowed out, all the way through to some fairly sober calculations that nevertheless it reaches the point where the thing that you're trying to save people from is not as bad as what they're then actually going through. So no, I agree with you that pubs are not going to open the day the lockdown is lifted. But if there's people seriously saying it's going to be Q3, Q4, I mean that can just off. It is not sustainable in any way, shape, or form to do that. And I will be, I'm afraid I will be part of the people taken to the streets with a picture.
Okay. I think that's probably going to happen then, so that'll be interesting. That should be quite funny.
Well, look, give us something for the video, won't it?
All these people who talk about that there will be unrest in the streets and that kind of thing, there seems to be a healthy overlap with the same people who talk about bringing back national service. I would love to see this revolution happen.
I've no interest in national service.
The weakest army of Mr. Burns coming out with pitchforks.
It's, to be honest, it's more than just a pub thing, though, isn't it? That if you,
I can live without the pub.
Well, I know
pub is inconsequential to me. Couldn't care less.
Well, yes, but then it's essentially, given that restaurants and the rest of it fall under much the same categorizations, and they can do takeout. Yeah, that's not the point. It's just no, it's not sustainable in a social sense. And yes, again, there's also the spate of articles saying, "Oh, we'll never mass socialize again." Bollocks. There will be obvious alterations and the rest of it, but never. You don't just on a whim decide that having shut down vast swathes of the bits and bobs that makes the country work, you then just don't reopen a fifth of it. That strikes me as bizarre and pointless.
But nobody knows yet. Everybody's making it up as we go along. So,
no, I know everyone is making it up as we go along, but nevertheless, there is that you can already see people with their own hobby horses. It's like, oh, well, this country's got an over-dependency on alcohol. What if we could use this as a means of moving away from? I mean, I think we can take one look at the rise in sales of alcohol direct from supermarkets to work out that probably isn't going to happen. But
I mean, somebody stupid enough the other day said we don't need oil anymore. Aye, right, that'll be shiny bright as well.
So there's a subset of people who need to be watched like hawks over the next couple of weeks because they've got a litany of stupid ideas and they are fizzing at the bung at the idea of bringing them to bear.
Well, I mean, look at the US police this week having to deal with domestos incidents and breach of the peace.
Well, yes, that's that's an interesting point in US political history, isn't it?
He's now saying he didn't say it.
Given that you've just announced that you're going to take to the streets if they don't open the pubs on time, I think you made the list, Ed.
I'm not talking about. Essentially, I don't think I'd be the only person here. If you suddenly decide, good news, you can go to work and you can do all these sorts of other things, but no, there's no form of after hours. The mechanics by which the things that you do when you're not working are all not opening. I don't think I'd be the only person that raises some objections to that. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots of inconsistencies with the whole lockdown thing. I mean, calling it lockdown, it's not lockdown.
No.
It's nowhere near a lockdown. These are restrictions, I think, is the correct wordage to use here. Certainly not a lockdown, not like Spain, for example, where it is proper lockdown.
Bulgaria, €2,500 fine if you can't demonstrate that you are essentially on the way to a shop.
Yeah, and but even then, you have I think B&Q opened up this weekend, and the pictures of people queuing for B&Q, you think, well, bang goes any kind of social distancing and all the rest of it. So there's
actually, I do need bin bags, and they do the best bin bags. So
in terms of social distancing and all the rest of it, there are some major inconsistencies, and that's always going to happen, I think. So we've been through Steve, we've been through Ed. I've said my piece. Kaz?
Yeah, I managed to get online poker sorted with a bunch of friends. So we normally get together and play poker, probably about this time of year, in person.
When have you got time? Do you play poker and watch films at the same time?
Yeah, he just pops the screen up behind someone,
Yeah.
and then also reads the card in the reflection.
We play poker. Well, yeah, it's funny you should say that. They did accuse me of typing on my keyboard whilst playing, but we play poker probably twice a year, and obviously during lockdown, this was the time we were going to get together, and we found an online poker system, and we got on Google Hangouts so we could see each other whilst playing, and then it was just us round the table, so 6 people round an online table, and it actually worked pretty well. It was a bit rusty to begin with, and we had to iron out the kinks, but it worked pretty well.
How much do you lose?
Nothing. We just played for the stake of who wins. I mean, to be honest, when we play, everyone buys in with a fiver. We spend more money on petrol and food than actually
Hold'em or stud?
Say again? Hold'em or stud?
Yeah.
Oh, Hold'em.
Right.
We haven't played stud poker for years. But yes, we did tournament style, which was extremely fast-paced and raising the blinds, and by the end of it, everyone was...
Broke.
It was very, very on edge, because you got seconds to make a bet, and the blinds keep going up and up and up until it gets ridiculous. But it was fun. Anyway, so it was nice making that happen. We would normally get together in person, and we could do video calls. We'd done a video call before with the 6 of us, but it was nice interacting and doing poker at the same time.
Okay, so you should be an expert when it comes to doing this Q&A this week and doing a video podcast. And so
if anyone asks anything about films, sure.
Well,
we'll see.
Well, that's kind of the point, yeah. That's what you're there for, or discs or so on, right? So who's left? Oh yes, Mark.
I've been doing just a lot of kind of reading in the Sun.
You don't read the Sun.
No, how dare you? That's slander corner again. That is, but no. Just lots of kind of little jobs. I mean, I couldn't get on the poddy last week because my Mac was dying. And so it's one of those kind of jobs that I've spent ages putting off, which was kind of sorting out all the things on it that are slowly ground it into the dirt.
Is it a 2012?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Is MacBook Pro?
Yep.
And the way around it, what did you do? Offload everything and then do a complete reinstall?
No. I just... got one of these programs to clean the cache and then clean all the other stuff, and basically it's all the files that seem to just kind of, they're like the kind of detritus in the belly button of a Mac OS that just they never get cleaned out for some reason. And so once that happened, but I've ordered some more RAM and a solid state hard drive, and so I just figure I'll keep this one running for a while. I want to see how far I can take it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I had a 2012 MacBook Pro, and it got to the stage where obviously I was using it for video editing and all the rest of it, and I had it absolutely maxed out in terms of memory and all the rest of it, and it just got to the stage where it was taking all day to render files and so on. So it run its useful life anyway. So what happened was I eventually transferred everything over onto the new MacBook Pro, and then I completely wiped the old one and I gave it to my mum, and got it all set up, and it was running quicker than it had run in years because I'd taken
she
everything
presumably
off.
Doesn't edit a lot of videos either.
No, but she's into photography, so she's a photographer, so she does use a lot of those programs, and some of the graphics.
Yeah, why I thought I'd rather than just kind of get rid of it or just kind of slum it with a tablet these days, because I don't really use it, but I thought, I've got a DSLR and I never really learned how to use it, and I thought, well, this lockdown, perhaps, if I can do one thing that's vaguely worthwhile, learn something, it would be nice to think that I hadn't just completely wasted my time.
As long as it's not long lenses into your neighbours.
No. That's telescope work, Phil. You should know that.
I have to be honest. One of the things I've done cameras, Mark, whilst on lockdown, is I've been trying to work on flash bounce off the walls and actually learning, in a fixed position, what different rates and what levels of reflection and stuff you get back and things. So hopefully make my show photos marginally less shite. But we'll see how we go.
Yep. Well, a good tip is the three light system. So if you do a quick Google search, you'll see how, especially if you're shooting static objects, it's how to position lighting within the room, so you kill as much of the shadow as possible. So we're getting way off track anyway.
But that's the nature of the podcast. So
Anything
we're just
else,
going
Mark?
to do it in video.
No, just largely kind of hitting my cold turkey stage for televised football. But other than that,
I'm not missing it. I'm not missing it at all. And this thing has again brought to the fore, for me anyway, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but just how overly paid these people are in the Premier League. It's ridiculous sums of money and all the rest of it. And my boyhood team are Hibs, which they're not really a football team. You can't really call them football. In the Scottish League, so there's no money there whatsoever. So any income they have coming in is fought over when it comes to Scottish football. And the thing that it made me feel really quite proud was that this year their home shirt, they don't have a sponsor of alcohol or drugs or betting or anything like else. They have Save the NHS on the front of their shirts. So they are doing without an income stream to show their support for the NHS. And this is in a league that has no money whatsoever. And I just think that's great. That's fantastic. You won't see the Premier League doing that.
I will fully take that on board, and it's a commendable thing to do. However, I have to disagree about the whole kind of the way in which Premier League footballers and football in general has kind of been pushed, particularly by kind of people like Matt Hancock. As
it has to be said, it's weird one to single out.
You are dealing with an industry where ultimately the workers have the mass of the money, and it gets through to them. And when you have people paying 40% tax, and they are paying millions through that goes into hospitals, that goes into frontline services and those kind of things, and then to turn around and say, well, what are you doing about it?
Yeah,
I think well, it's a little bit unfair. But anyway, I'm enjoying, should we say, the time without football now. And
you've not been watching the Belarusian Premier League, which is still up and running?
No, I've been watching the FA Cup archives on BBC. Which you forget just how awful the pitches were back when it's brilliant. It was the 77 FA Cup final between FA Cup semi-final, between Liverpool and Everton. And these days you've got these multi-million pound kind of pitches, which are, it's part artificial and it's sown with the grass seed and it's got, the correct temperature and all this kind of thing. There was just a huge mud pit in the goal mouth, and a kind of bloke comes out in a
defensive line of trenches at one point.
Yeah, just a bloke comes out with his fag on and a spade and just kind of sticks it in a little bit, give it a bit of a wiggle with a fork or something. Says, that'll do. But I've even been watching they've been doing this FIFA tournament where the players are playing FIFA against one another, and I think I've kind of hit the wall there. And I'm a little bit worried now that when it comes back, maybe I just won't care anymore. It seems odd that you suddenly realise that it's all quite pointless.
This was kind of the point I was trying to make.
Yeah,
I agree with you there, Mark. Is it?
I'm living vicariously through the achievements of others, and it's like seeing through the Matrix.
Well, yeah, there is an element of that.
Yeah. So I seem to be the only one that's climbing the wall this week. We'll see who it is next week.
I think it has been phased. We've done it. We've gone through, climbed the wall, and gone through it at different points.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just you, Phil. Almost everyone on the poker group had reached their this was their breaking point weekend, where it was, I've had enough weekends where I'm locked in, and a few of my wife's friends have felt much the same thing. I haven't quite noticed it yet, but even the kids are having a bit of craziness. So maybe it is
We're in trouble if you ever notice it, Kaz.
Oh, my son is bored out of his arse. There's no dressing that up, So honestly, given that the risk around schools was always a bit of a debatable thing, the sooner those unlucky sods get sent back in for a spot of education, the better. So I'm all for that.
Okay, let's brighten up somebody's week with things that they can win, and who's going to do it this week. Let's go to Mark.
Okay, we've still got the competition for 21 Bridges on Blu-ray. That one ends 6th of May. Ending the same day, you can win a copy of Preacher, the final season, also on Blu-ray. Then we've got a copy of The Elephant Man on limited edition, 4K Blu-ray, that one. That one ends 13th of May. And we've got copies of Criterion's May titles on Blu-ray. That one ends 19th of May. And we've also got the Yamaha YAS 109 Simple all-in-one soundbar, and you've got till 21st of May for that one. And does anyone want to say what the Criterion titles are?
There's only one person that will know this.
Oh, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you.
All right, then.
You'll have to enter the competition to find out. It's They Live by Night, Prince of Tides, and The Cranes Are Flying. So it's a usually diverse collection of titles. But they're almost always, I mean, they're beautifully presented, and there's almost always 2 out of 3 that you'll enjoy seeing, and a third which you can appreciate.
Yeah, good stuff. And as ever, all competitions are open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK.
Apart from me. And previous competition winners?
None.
Okay, that's it for what we've been doing. It's a good 32 minutes there.
Of arguing, yeah.
And we'll be back with some hardware stuff next. Okay, I think we're going to be quite quick with hardware reviews. Certainly I'm going to be quick, and I'm going to go first because of that, because the review is up on the homepage and the video is also up on our YouTube channel as well. So that's the Philips OLED 754. It is a budget OLED TV. I think we've discussed it a few times on the podcast, and basically the basic gist of this is that it's a good TV under £1,000 for the mass market. If you're somebody who is a gamer, or you're somebody who wants accurate SDR images, this TV's not for you. The gaming input lag is about twice as slow as other competing OLEDs, and when it comes to accurate picture quality, it's not able to be accurate in SDR because the colour gamut follows P3 in SDR and not Rec 709, which it should do for HD material. So colours are oversaturated when it comes to SDR content. I guess the vast majority of users who will pick this TV up won't give a jot about that because they'll be shoving it into vivid mode or standard mode, which has all the Philips processing switched on, all the image smoothing switched on, and turning SDR into HDR and all that kind of jazz. If that's your thing, then this TV's perfect for you. It's under £1,000, and that will go for the mass market, basically. So the mass market will pick this TV up and won't see any issues whatsoever with it. The only real negative, other than the SDR side of things, because for HDR it was perfect because it was following P3 colour. It managed 600, if I remember right, I think it was 605 nits and 10% window. So peak brightness was okay. The dynamic tone mapping is good on the Philips. If you switch it on the minimum, they call it HDR perfect minimum. Everything's perfect on a Philips TV. They use the perfect word everywhere. And it's remembering which perfect you're talking about. But the HDR thing, as long as it's set to minimum, it does some nice dynamic tone mapping with 4000 and 1000 nit content, and it will display as much of the specular highlight detail as it can within the capabilities of the TV. So yeah, it is an all-rounder under £1,000 for the 55-inch. It's a fairly good TV. It's just if you're looking for accuracy or you're a video gamer, there are better TVs out there. And of course, as Paul hinted at last week in the podcast, we've still got a lot of 2019 models in the marketplace. We're still going to have quite a few of them in the marketplace as the months go on. And I've noticed that certainly the B series from LG, the B9 is only £100 more than this OLED 754. So I'd go with the LG, because the other thing that is quite annoying with the Philips is the Safi smart TV system. Now, it does work. It just takes a little while to get up and running, and your button press to something happening. In isolation, I still think you would notice it. Certainly with using other TVs like I do here, and then going over to that, I certainly noticed the lag between pressing a button and something happening on screen. But seeing that, it has most of the apps apart from Disney Plus on there, and 4K HDR playback on Netflix and Amazon. So it does it. It's just a bit slow and a bit clunky and a bit laggy. And when you're talking £100 difference between this and the LGB, my money would be on the LGB, because I want accuracy and I want a little bit quicker. But if you because one of the big advantages with Philips is Ambilight. So if you like Ambilight, then that's where we are with things. And I've got to say, Ambilight is really, really quite good. Although ISF is missing, which is obviously why it was wide for Rec 709, because there's no CMS on it either. So to cut costs,
there are no ISF controls.
So there's no ISF controls. Right. Because there's no ISF controls, there's no ISF mode. But you can set it to static. It's not D65 white. So it's still white, and you can still adjust it. So you can still use it as a bike.
This is akin to those tests. Remember Performance Car Magazine? And I think they were contractually obliged once a year to test family hatchbacks. And they'd get into a fury because the Renault Megane wouldn't lift off oversteer correctly as far as they were concerned. As you pointed out right at the beginning, you actually nailed it, and you've deviated from nailing it hence on in. Philips very clearly has a target market in question. These
Absolutely.
People are not looking for their televisions to oversteer. They're looking for them to be big, bright, and fundamentally colourful.
Yeah. And
I do think the Safi, having now I've tinkered with the Safi television shortly before we went, and I do agree with, because I was, I had interest in it, because when back in the before time, when pricing was going to do normal things, I was contemplating just buying a giant simplistic television. But I have to say that would be one area that would grate over time, especially given how good Philips' Android TV implementation is.
It's always been strong, and I thought this would be okay, because it had a quad-core processor at its heart, but no, it's maybe something with the code or whatever. It's just a bit laggy. It works once it's up to speed. It's just laggy, and you really notice it coming from another modern TV with a smart system. But yeah, this is not for the AVForums audience, or certainly it's more of a.
It's not your primary television anyway.
No. But good price. It's OLED, and it's got all the strengths of an OLED, and you can't turn your nose up at that. I just wish, if it had an accurate SDR mode, I'd be recommending it to the hilt. It would have scored a lot higher, and so on.
Oh, hello.
No, that's my smart meters telling me that they're not working again.
Oh, fine. Okay.
What, as in power smart meters? Or?
Yeah, they always have a fit. Right, moving on. We are starting to see some of the 2020 TVs. I've certainly been offered a couple, and Steve has actually got one. So, and it was the one that I was desperate to see, because I thought it's the one in the LG range that's
let's play a game, Phil. Let's play a game, right? You've seen the TV at CES, haven't you? This is this just for people that we're talking about. This is the LG G10. Yeah. So you've seen it at CES, and you've obviously heard LG's various announcements. So let's play the game. You can do the review, and I'll tell you if you're right. So, design.
Design is beautiful. Really nice design. It's 20. Is it 15 or 20 millimeters thick?
Millimeters deep from top to bottom.
So what they've done is they've basically taken what they were doing with the wallpaper TV, which was a really thin TV that was held on the wall with magnets, and then you had the soundbar underneath that had all the gubbins in it, electronics and speakers and all the rest of it. And what they've done is they've moved the electronics and the speakers and everything else into the back of the TV, but tried to keep it as thin as possible when you're talking about an OLED. So it has everything built into it, and it's also designed to be wall mounted. So actually on the back of the TV there are cable runs, there's cables, there's bits made out so you can run your power cable, you can run all the cables into the connections and all the rest of it. and keep everything out of view, so you can wall mount it and it'll look absolutely, as long as you put the cables through the wall, obviously, it'll look absolutely
I was going to say,
pristine.
that's the one downside.
Yeah.
It's 15 millimeters from top to bottom. It's stunning. It's bloody heavy. It's really heavy. I think that's what they made it out of, but it weighs a ton. It comes with a bracket if you want to wall mount it flush against the wall, but it's also standard basically 2 feet. So and they're 136 centimeters apart, so you need quite a wide surface.
The stand's really clever because it's actually got a cutout on the back of the TV as well, so it will go absolutely flush with the wall.
You can put it, if you were wall mounting, you can get it absolutely flush against the wall. The only downside is, as you say, Phil, you're going to have assuming you're using 4 devices, the tuner and a power cable, that's a minimum 6 cables that have to go in to the TV, and that's one area where Samsung have absolutely nailed it with the One Connect box, where you've just got one single little cable going to the TV. So that would be, you're right. In order to make it look attractive, you need to either hide those cables somehow. But design-wise, it is absolutely stunning. Yes, it's a gorgeous TV. It's beautifully made. It's very solid. As I say, it's really heavy.
Because the big problem with the range last year, Stephen, I think they've realised it, which is why the E has disappeared, was that apart from slight design changes, there wasn't much to choose from because the panels are all the same. And I spoke to Neil at CES, and I have him on camera as well in an interview, saying that the panel that's in a C10 is the same panel that's in the E, it's the same in the G, it's the same in the W, and so on. They are the same panels. They are not grading them and saying, well, that one is a lower grade panel, so put that in the lower end model, the B model or whatever. That's not the case. So they all have the same panel, the same processor and everything else. So the only real differences are the design and how they do that, and the cosmetic differences. And the thing was that there was too much similarity in too many models in the lineup. And what they've done this year is they made sure that the C10 looks like the C9, looks like the C8. It's same design, same stand, and all the rest of it. The G, this is where they've made a big difference. So there is a price difference, but you're actually getting something back for that money, which is what I really quite liked about the lineup this year when it was shown at CES. And it is a different TV. It's the same panel, but in terms of the design and cosmetics and everything else, and it looks gorgeous.
It's amazing how they managed to cram. I mean, because it also sounds good, which is amazing, because you think, how have they managed to cram connections, electronics and speakers into something that's 15 millimeters deep?
Yeah, and of course there is an optional soundbar as well, which is just as thin as the TV, and it sits underneath the TV, and it sits wall mounted on the TV as well. So there is that as well as an optional extra, and it wasn't something they announced at CES. I just happened to see it in the back room where you go in.
I've seen photographs of it, but they didn't.
It's gorgeous as well, and it looks really, really nice sitting underneath the TV. So they've really thought about the design and the ergonomics of the TV and how it's going to work and so on, and that's nice because, like I say, the last few ranges from LG, they've all kind of been quite samey. The glass design, the on-glass design and that kind of thing. It was nice, but I found when I was reviewing the E9 last year, I use a glass stand, TV stand, and the glass on the glass, what a horrible noise that makes. I actually thought I'd broken something when I first placed it onto the glass stand because, so it's a nicer design, I think. So in terms of picture quality, there's not going to be a huge difference, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say quickly, obviously like last year's TVs, the HDMI inputs are all 2.1 and the remote control is identical. It's the same as last year.
Yeah.
So that's the same.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any updates on WebOS. I think there's...
Right. So glad you mentioned that. WebOS. So they have, again, just slightly tweaked... now, when you turn on the TV, WebOS launches immediately, but you can turn that off in the menu, which I did because it was really annoying. I don't want WebOS launching when I turn the television on. I want to just select it. So you can either have it on or off. You can also turn off all the advertising gubbins on the left-hand side if you want to, which I did because I don't want to see that. So that's quite nice for you. You can do that on the earlier TVs, but the launching the bar and as soon as you turn the TV on was really annoying, and I turned that off straight away. The menus, the little pop-up menu that comes up the side, that's been slightly different, style, but it's essentially the same. It just looks slightly different, and you can actually customize it and select different things if you want on that side menu that pops up. at the side. The big problem for me is that this year, for God knows why, LG have stopped supporting Freeview Play. So as they currently stand, 2020 LG TVs do not have any UK catch-up services on them. They're having to recertify them all separately. I thought, when I first turned on, I thought, where the hell's BBC iPlayer and everything? Not on there right now. Which, frankly, currently would put me off buying it. Because I'm loath to just take them at their word for it.
And that's important to say, as it is a review. Don't buy the TV thinking, well, they're going to.
I asked them. So. I said, where are they? They said we haven't used. I don't know why. They didn't explain why. We haven't got Freeview Play this year, so we've had to recertify them, which will take time. I said, well, how long will that take? Well, we can't say, but we're in the process of doing it, so God knows. But as they currently stand, they do not have any UK catch-up services on them. They have everything else, mind you. So Now TV, Apple TV, Disney Plus, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, Rakuten. So everything else you could say could take out, but currently no UK catch-up services. Otherwise, though, as you say, Phil, it's essentially the same.
That's quite it's quite mad, isn't it? That it's not. As I say, sometimes when you start talking about the finer minutiae of what happens when you plot a graph of its picture, my eyes glaze over. But the complete absence of catch-up TV would be quite a bind.
I have absolutely no idea what is going on there, and I have no information. But it sounds like somebody's made a boob there and
dropped the ball.
hasn't paid a license fee or so on. Obviously, there's been a fallout somewhere if they're having to recertify everything as well. So somebody's dropped the ball there, unfortunately. And like you say, that does make a difference, because the one thing you could always say about LG is it's got everything on it and it's got HDMI 2.1.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't really say that at the minute, can you? So, and obviously it doesn't have HDR10 plus, but that's not an issue at all. Yeah. That's a bit unfortunate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Filmmaker mode?
Right. So, yes, the filmmaker mode. Now, first of all, to include filmmaker mode, they've dropped Technicolor mode, but no great loss there, really.
No.
And filmmaker mode is essentially, not surprisingly, is basically almost exactly the same as ISF darkroom mode. The only difference between the two is that filmmaker mode is set to an OLED light of 25, which measures 100 nits, and the darkroom mode has a OLED light setting of 60, which measures at 120 nits. And I think on darkroom mode, the true motion setting is user, whereas in filmmaker mode it's off. Yep. Otherwise, they're identical. And if you measure them both, they are identical. There's tiny differences, but essentially they're the same. They're the same setting. Now, you can manually select filmmaker mode, or you can set it to auto. However, there's no point doing that at the moment because none of the content's got the flags in it, so it won't work. Because I had me going for a bit. I had it set to auto, and I'm thinking, this isn't going into filmmaker mode. I'm watching a film. Why is it going to filmmaker mode? And they said, it has to have the flag in it, and nothing's got the flag yet. So don't worry.
I'm trying to remember what it was they were using at CES to get it to.
They were forcing a flag. They had to.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember how they did it now. I think it might have been on a Meridio 6G. I think they were forcing it that way.
Yeah. But I think you can force it, but yes, basically there isn't any content. But you can manually select it if you want to use it. So big deal. But as I say, if you were an owner of an older LG TV, like a 9 series, just stick it in ISF darkroom. Same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so the full review will be up.
Sorry, one more thing. Dolby Vision IQ. Dolby Vision IQ isn't a separate setting. You basically just select. Because I thought, I better check this out, and I'm like, where the hell is it? And then they just used to put it in Dolby Cinema Home, and that uses the light sensor. And they said, and in fact, it always has. But we just couldn't call it that last year. I'm like, okay, so. Basically, what we're saying here is buy a C9 because you're going to get more for your money.
At this moment in time, you absolutely are.
I would honestly, if you're asking me, would you get a 9 or 10 series? Get a 9 series because you get all the iPlayer and everything, but also you save some money and you're going to have all the same features anyway. Perhaps slightly different names, but well, we'll say one thing: that out-of-box accuracy was awesome.
Yeah, and you're also you mentioned price there, but actually these are cheaper on launch this year, aren't they? The TVs.
Yeah, they are cheaper. Cheaper than last year. Last year at launch. Obviously, they're not cheaper than last year's TVs if you buy last year's TV now.
Right, okay. I think we've covered everything there. And like I say, the review is up this week.
One more thing. Game mode is 13 milliseconds. So
13, did you
12.9 to be precise.
Right, so one frame. Yeah. Well, it's actually under one frame, isn't it?
It's under a frame, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I mean, you could go a lot lower than that, but you're never going to notice it, really. So
no, anyone who says they could always read like 9 or milliseconds and 12 milliseconds or 30 milliseconds is lying.
Right. So that's the TVs out of the way, and like I say, that review, I'll get this sentence finished this time. That review will be up on Thursday, Steve. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Right. Let's move on. Let's go to Ed, because Ed had a nice piece that was up on the homepage, and it's still on the homepage because it's further down the homepage because obviously you've got Star Wars,
8,000 Star Wars films
movies, in the way now. But social distancing, music, and a concert for one. Now, some people may say, well, there's more than one person in my household that listens to music. But anyway, we won't get into pedantic things like that. What was it all about, Ed, and why did you think it was important?
Well, I took a different slant on an opening piece for music over the excellent work that Kaz and his team have done with streaming services, films, etc. As an opening gambit, it struck me as unwise to immediately lecture people, or at least even suggest to people what they should be listening to. My take on this is that there would be a significant number of people who weren't necessarily in principal control of their main AV system because it had children in front of it and was watching Frozen for the 475th time. And essentially it was me, the piece is me pointing out that if you want to use this as a means of discovery, find out lots of new music, all the rest of it, then get stuck in. But for the most part, you don't need a huge amount of stuff to retreat to a quiet place and simply enjoy stuff that you've been listening to for donkey's years and maybe have fallen out of the habit of listening to. Just chill out with it. And I think possibly the most useful link in there is that if you were simply looking for a means of making your laptop noise proof, there was a link to a very solid pair of earphones, which I think were 36 quid delivered Amazon Prime. Now I'm going to use this. Obviously you can read the piece, it's up there. I'm amazed that no one asked me what was in the glass in the thing, because it's not whiskey. It might look like that, but it's PG Tips. From there, I decided to get a slightly more ambitious exercise. So I thought, let's put together a list of albums that might be worth pottering through. That you can, just a set of suggestions. And if you like it, the nature of how streaming services work is that you can immediately then see a whole clutch of things that are like that. So I started with 10, and 10 wasn't really enough, as you might imagine. So I thought, okay, we'll have a look at 20, and that still wasn't enough either. And I thought, okay, bollocks to it, let's do 100. Now, I can do 100, but it gets a bit diffuse. And actually, because I didn't just want to do a list, I wanted to explain why I'd chosen them. That worked out as a marathon. It worked out as the sort of thing that that was the sort of coffee length that Steve puts down for an AV processor, and there is more worth in doing that. So I've carved it back, and there will be a recommendation set for 50 albums. The other part of this being that if, who knows, good fortune smiles upon us and lockdown is lifted, you can still potter through the list at your own speed. It will be going up imminently because it's ready to go. I've done the list, I've found some art and the rest of it. But it's back-loaded, I should say, not front-loaded. It goes from 1960 to the present, but there's only a very small number of 60s albums, and it increases in quantity per decade until we get to the present. We should be looking forwards, not back. And the whole purpose of it is that it deliberately avoids, the mega hit releases of a particular decade. I figure that if you haven't heard of Peter Gabriel by now you don't have any interest in finding out about Peter Gabriel by now, and it goes all the way through, and such is the case with the more recent release.
You say that, Ed, but I recently have done just that. I've always known who he was, but I was always just his popular stuff. I've actually gone back and gone through his back catalogue and so on, and I've found quite a few bits and pieces.
Okay, well, suffice to say that I think the list works on its own merit, and who knows, it might give people who are looking for a good argument, who are currently still occupying the Phantom Menace thread, something for them to do as well, because I'm sure that there are at least a couple of ones in there which will be vehemently disagreed with. Not least because, as far as I'm concerned, one of the very finest albums of the 1980s was done by Rosanne Cash, daughter of Johnny Cash, who has significant country music chops, and decided then to do an album of 80s ballads, which against all logic and reason is extraordinarily good. But I'm sure that a couple of people will probably disagree with that. So that'll be going up. But if you listen to this, and I don't want to say to prescribe that you should be listening to X, Y, and Z. Music, unlike the streaming services, the video streaming services, where there's much more curated content, and there's things that are on there, and you should look at them because they're time limited and so on and so forth, or their new release. Music streaming services, fundamentally, it's all on there. If you want to get big into Gregorian chant music, you can get big into Gregorian chant music.
I haven't done that yet.
Well, no, let's hope that none of us reach that stage. But nevertheless, it's not for me, a 39-year-old white bloke, to tell all of you what you should be listening to. I've put together some suggestions as best I can, based on the fact that I am fortunate enough to spend the better part of my life listening to music. But nevertheless, the piece that's up there, and my sentiment to this is, if you want to get stuck into a voyage of discovery, streaming services will help you with that. If you simply want to listen to music that reminds you of a time where we weren't all shut in our houses, my recommendation is that you get stuck into that as well.
Good stuff. Always good recommendations, Ed, and I've got to say I am absolutely caning it when it comes to music, because like I say, the shops downstairs are closed now, so I can absolutely have the system on as loud as I like, and I've been doing lots of music listening. Mm. And again, and you make the point in your piece, and you made the point a few times, music is a bit more personal, and it definitely affects your mood. And I've actually found myself going back to music from certain periods in my life and going back through them again, especially dance stuff and stuff that makes me feel good. I think I sent you a couple of bits and pieces.
Yeah.
It's dead commercial Pete Tong stuff, but the Heritage Orchestra, the stuff he does with them, if you want feel good, feel happy, dancey, poppy commercial stuff playing in the background just to keep your spirits up, that I've been caning those, and I've been finding quite a bit as well in terms of some of the suggestions you've given me. So Slow Readers Club, absolutely loving them. It's very much up my street, and I wasn't expecting much going into it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed. I think Build a Tower is their best album, which is from 2018.
Probably agree with that.
But again, some excellent stuff on there, and quite a few influences as well that you can pick out in their music as well. So,
but one of the reasons I've done this piece is because it does trace a number of the albums on there are, as far as I'm concerned, they're the genesis point for a whole movements of stuff. So, for example, talk about the influence of the Slow Readers Club. There's an album by the Chameleons, one of the lesser, an inexplicably not megastar band from the 80s. It should have been. It should have been gigantic, and for whatever reason it wasn't. And then also one of the 60s albums, it's not quite the same as any of the other albums on the list because objectively it's not good. It is, however, the first electronic dance album ever made, and it was made in 1968. And it's, if you have an interest in that, and I've made no secret about the fact that I do, that forget Kraftwerk, forget Jean-Jacques Perry, and then ignore the experimental musicians like Delia Derbyshire, very important with doing all of her Doctor Who stuff, but never really set out for it to be something that you got pilled up to. These guys, they created the first electronic dance album, and it's all on streaming services. If you don't have to invest any money to listen to the Genesis point. It's quite cool. And there is no Genesis on there as well, for better or worse.
Were they not supposed to be getting back together and touring this year?
They are, but I'm worried because Phil Collins is literally falling to pieces. His spine is held together by, well, I just think the rest of Phil Collins.
Drumsticks?
Well, he can't drum. I'm not being facetious for a moment. His son has to do the drumming, and he
puts his arms behind his back or something like that.
No. The last
like
time
David
he did
Bowie in Labyrinth.
No, he's dressed as a gorilla.
A live concert, he couldn't stand up. You had to do all of his stuff sitting down. He's properly broken.
Yeah.
But this is the thing that happens to drummers, with the weird exception of Roger Taylor, who apparently is a Terminator and doesn't seem to suffer from any of these things. But almost all other drummers from the 70s and 80s, they're either dead or basically broken. And on that bombshell,
I was just going to say, Ed, Mary Jane Coles. I think I sent something to you about her a while back. There's a new EP out, and I started listening to that, and you know how on Spotify you start listening to EP and then it'll go through and start a radio station based on, and I've got to say I found so many great tracks that I had no idea existed through just
it has to be said,
that.
there have been points where I've been thinking about actually going back to Spotify simply because its curation stuff is excellent. I mean, the thing is, it doesn't integrate with Rune, and neither side has any interest in altering that. Although Rune's recommendations are pretty impressive. I mean, it will, if you were listening to an album that you own and it gets to the end, it'll look at its own genre searches and then just set off on its own sort of voyage of discovery, and that's quite impressive in its own right as well. So, I mean, there's I've deliberately avoided a whole tranche of new things, but the list itself predominates towards the 21st century. So hopefully there's something. There's 50 albums. Hopefully at least one of them will appeal to somebody somewhere.
And of course our next Monday podcast, because we're doing the Q&A on Thursday, but the next actual podcast, that is the end of the month one. So we'll be having your album and playlist and so on that podcast. So that's something to look forward to next week. We need these things to look forward to at the moment. Movies next. Right, moving on to film releases. Again, Kaz, I am guessing that this is an early... no, it's not an early release because it's had its cinema run, so this must just be the film coming to the home, is it?
Yes, I mean, I think it is an early rental before when it would normally be released, because it's not out on physical media yet. But yeah, Jojo Rabbit, which we didn't actually cover at the cinema, it's coming out today as the podcast goes out. So people can check that out. That's all we've got this week. It's actually, I have to say, all this talk of early premium rentals, it's kind of died down now. We used to get like 4 a week, in terms of cinema releases.
They're not making any content at the minute, so they're not going to release stuff, are they? They're going to drip it out in little drips. I don't think we're going to see anything major coming to streaming services or rental during this year, because unless it's had a cinema run, they're going to be holding things back, I think. I don't know what you think, Steve. You tend to keep your eye on it.
I mean, given that they've already moved pretty much everything from this year into either the end of this year or into next year entirely.
Apart from
and
Tenet.
given, that's not going to come out in August.
I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? He's talking
it's
about
not coming out. It's not coming out. There's no cinemas open, and they're not going to be. Why would you really? I mean, it'll affect its box office, and but also, the thing you have to remember is that nothing's in production. So they're going to need to have films to release next year because they aren't making any at the moment. But yeah, I think we might see some smaller budget films getting like we did a few months ago, a month ago. But the big stuff, they're just going to sit on it for next year now.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Do you think we're going to see a spate of re-releases where there's lots of director's commentary done as like Zoom and?
They're already
Skype
doing
calls?
that. They're already doing that.
Best we can hope for.
They're already sitting down with on Zoom and talking through their films.
So does this mean that James Cameron's finally going to get onto the Abyss?
Yeah, he's got no excuse now, is he?
Oh, he'll find one. He's just doing post-production tinkering on 17 Avatar sequels. That's what's taken up his time. That's what he'll say.
Yeah, well, that would be the ideal time, wouldn't it, to get to release these catalog titles, which is what it seems to be happening at Paramount, because they got a load of Cruise and Spielberg things coming out. War of the Worlds, Top Gun, Days of Thunder, and something else. Well, yeah, but that's not Paramount. I was thinking about Paramount Pacific. They've got quite a few. But there's Blues Brothers coming out. That's Universal. So, yeah, there's a lot of... it's a great time to bring out a lot of catalogue stuff, because there's obviously going to be nothing new. So if there's ever going to be a time for the Abyss to get released, this is it.
Make or break.
The one good thing to come out of the pandemic is we finally get the Abyss. That would be great.
I have no doubt that he will make up an excuse not to do it.
Well, I don't think it's up to him. Presumably, it's Disney's call, isn't it, now?
It can't be, surely.
Well, they're the ones that... It's their film.
He'll have something in his contract to say no release goes out without his approval.
Oh, yes, but I mean, if they aren't rushing it, because, why? Then even if he's... I know they've done all the work, so it's just a question of him...
I can understand True Lies. I can understand that, given the subject matter within that film. You can see why they would maybe not be too keen to release that movie. But The Abyss, it's a seminal sci-fi film. It introduced lots of new production techniques and CG. It was the first CG character ever in a film. It's a landmark movie, and
maybe they
really
weren't CG, and maybe it's a documentary, and maybe they can't actually release it because it's the truth, and the truth will out. Although maybe I'm just stuck indoors and
you've been in way too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've seen Jojo Rabbit, and I got the 4K disc, and it's quite good.
You got that back in 1980.
Yeah.
Release.
I had it since January. So
well, I was
thinking, like, did not come out on disc ages ago.
It only got its cinema release on New Year's Day, wasn't it?
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I think it was New Year's Day in this country. It got its cinema release. So, yeah, and it got buried pretty quickly, unfortunately, because I think it's quite a good movie, is it not? It's been getting some good reviews.
I thought it was very funny. The kids in it are excellent. His mate there's the main kid, but his mate is really, really funny. There's a bit, it's not plot related, but there's a bit where he's like asking Jojo to help him move some ammo around, because it's towards the end of the film, and he's going like, it's not looking good for us, because he's only about 10, they've stuck him in the army, and he's going, got the Russians coming from that direction, we've got the Americans coming from that direction, but the only people on our side are the Japanese, and between you and me, they don't look very Aryan.
Yeah, good stuff. So that's film releases. Review-wise, have we got anything to review, Kaz?
No, I mean, the only film that's come out that would have been worth mentioning is Extraction, and I haven't got around to seeing it because I've been a little bit preoccupied with other reviews, but that's the latest Netflix action.
It's quite good.
Yes, and I'm absolutely gutted. Do you know how many bad Netflix movies I've had to watch? Do you know how many I've churned through? And to hear that this latest one with Chris Hemsworth, Thor, is good. The action's really good. I'm like, what?
You just knew that was going to happen when you gave Tom that, didn't you?
Yeah.
He was going to get the good one.
I was safer off when I gave Kumari Love, Death, Weddings and Funerals, or whatever it was called. But this was a bad calculation.
Wedding, funeral, repeat.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move over to discs then. 4K and Blu-ray. What can we pick up?
Well, after the grandstanding Star Wars last week, all we got this week is Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. It's a little bit quiet at the moment, but that's because as Steve mentioned, they're only announcing all these ones. All those ones that he mentioned, the Tom Cruise ones, they haven't actually been announced. I don't think all for the UK yet.
No, there's not a lot going on UK-wise.
No, so it's a little bit quiet at the moment. But The Gentleman, Guy Ritchie's latest, which I really enjoyed at the cinema, that's coming out on 4K. And
because of the 4K releases in the UK, we are deliberately going to start reviewing the US releases again, Kaz, aren't we? And then if we get the UK discs in, we can tell you if it's the same or whatever. But we're going to move our 4K stuff over to the US discs because they're easy to get. You can buy them online. They're not that more expensive than the UK.
And they come out a lot sooner.
A lot easier, yeah, a lot sooner.
Yeah, so. we want to catch up with Steve. So yeah. That's all we got on 4K. Blu-ray releases, we've got that Criterion release, Prince of Tides, Nick Nolte, and also Escape from Pretoria.
No, Nick Nolte and Barbara Streisand. She is the star of it.
Well, yeah. I wasn't going to take
it as well.
Did she direct it?
Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe not. No, she only directed Yentl. But yeah, she's the star. It's Barbara Streisand and Nick Nolte.
You know what? It took until me writing up the competition for that to realise that her name is spelt really oddly. I didn't realize. I always thought it was just Barbara because I'd never really spent any considerable time researching
Barbara Streisand.
Barbara Streisand. I never realised that it's actually spelt Barbra, isn't it? Which I found interesting.
I
think you're the only one.
I just think of Mecha Streisand from South Park, and I would watch the live action version of that.
And we also got Daniel Radcliffe in Escape from Pretoria, and the physical release of Spies in Disguise, although no 4K release. I think it got 4K in the US.
Sorry, just quickly, credit where credit's due, Babs did direct The Prince of Tides as well.
Oh, there you go.
Babs Windsor. So that's the 4K and Blu-ray disc releases. Moving on, TV and streaming releases. So what can we... I'm assuming that some of these are rentals, Kaz.
Well, we've already mentioned Jojo Rabbit, but the other big release this week is the HBO series, miniseries, I Know This Much Is True, which is based on the book, and it's Mark Ruffalo playing twins, although one of them is the protagonist. One of them, I think, has PTSD and the other one has schizophrenia. And it's supposed to be quite good. I mean, Mark Ruffalo, so it's worth a watch. That's coming to Sky and Now TV, but it's HBO, so I would think people will pay a bit more attention to it. And that's it. That's all you got. After last week, where there were like 12 things released on streaming, this week's a little bit quieter. Thankfully.
The taps are beginning to be turned off. So
yeah. Right, there's been a lot of streaming reviews. Obviously, we're going to come on to them next week, or quite a few of our best TV stuff next week, which is our end of the month. But Kaz, you wanted to talk about Gangs of London.
Yeah, it's the show which I'm suspecting a lot of people hadn't heard of, or at the very least had dismissed as just another Cockney gangsters in London rip-off, wannabe generic crime thingy. I mean, certainly to a certain extent I did, until I realised that the person behind it was Gareth Evans, who'd done The Raid. And it turns out he's done more of The Raid in London with Cockney gangsters. And it's blisteringly violent, very, very brutal actioner, and exceptionally well-staged action scenes. It's actually got a story behind it, which is kind of handy, and it builds up some characters. It'll all be very familiar for people who've kind of watched the genre, but because he's got enough of a runtime over several episodes, and the first one, I think, feature length, it's an hour and a half, he can afford it to slow burn and then kick into crescendo for some superb ballets of violence. I mean, the action is not for the squeamish. If you've seen The Raid and The Raid 2, you know people are going to get impaled and their legs broken backwards and their faces ground on a wall, and it's going to be violent. It's not for the squeamish, but there's something tense and compelling about everything he stages. He loves having one guy outnumbered going down a corridor where you don't know what could be down there, and you don't, because the violence is like this, you don't really know how people are going to get out of it, or whether they're going to get out of it with both eyes intact. It's very well done. So if you like The Raid, and or if you like John Wick or decent actioners, then don't dismiss it just because it's got a horrendous title and has perhaps been slightly badly marketed by Sky. It's the guy who did The Raid doing Gangs in London, and it's well worth checking out. I mean, make it to the bar scene in the opening pilot, and that'll determine whether you want to watch the rest of the season alone.
And don't mention pubs to Ed.
No.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I
had
will
me
be
at
smearing someone's faces over the wall.
Yes. Yeah. That was Ed doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least we've managed to single out Ed's trigger now. We know what his trigger point is.
Well, it's just, I'm not, I don't do car clubs because, Joe, much as I like my car very much, many of the other people I meet who own them, we don't have a huge amount of common ground.
No, it's Sim and I owned Audis.
So, that's fair enough. But no, pubs have been a big part of my life. And it's not. The irony is, I'm drinking less. I mean, the thing is, I did an Instagram thing on this because I was bored. I'm going to the supermarket once a week and think, I'll just buy, I'll buy some beer. At one point, I got up to having 66 cans of beer because I just bought on a sort of automatic thing, and I wasn't drinking
talking
it.
about pubs.
No, I'm talking about the fact that shopping weekly has been a bit of a challenge. But I just missed the interaction. I missed the people watching. I missed the whole, and also as the weather improves, it just gets worse. But yeah. So you've given me lots of violence tips there, Kaz. So thanks. Good.
Yes, do. It's a lot of violence, and it's so bad that you want to turn your face away from it, but it's. I mean,
On a
it's also
sliding
utterly
scale
gripping.
of American History X.
I know people said that in the thread. I don't know why they're comparing it to that. This is.
No.
American History X
It's not.
is-
It's just that very specific
Right, the
moment
curb.
involving the curve.
I know,
The curve
I know.
one.
But I mean, the thing about that is that there is a lot of weight behind that scene. I mean, it's a horrific act that he committed, but it's not like he was in a big fight with someone and someone got their face kicked off. It's that he executed someone by curbing them, and it's not quite like that in this. But people do get significantly bad things done to them, significantly. Yeah. I mean, watch the bar scene. It's brutal.
No,
And later on, there's a campsite full of gypsies, and the things kick off there, and it's brutal.
The bite the curb scene is not that graphic. It's just brilliantly done.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's what I mean.
brilliantly
You
done. It's
can't-
all sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliantly done because they cut to a long shot when he actually kicks the guy's head, but it's the sound he makes. It's the sound of his teeth scratching the curb. You can hear the sound of the teeth on the curb, and that's the bit that sells it. And then it's a long shot, but it's a masterclass in editing and sound design that makes you think you've seen more than you actually have.
And Hitchcock was a master at that. You just think of the shower scene in Psycho. You don't see as much as you think you do. It's brilliant the way they do it. Right, let's move on. Let's finish off on a discussion point. We did Keanu Reeves last week, and we called him Hollywood superstar. This guy this week is a bona fide Hollywood superstar. You just have to see the shadow of the hat and the whip, and you know exactly who we're talking about. It's Harrison Ford. That has to be one of these cinema characters that you could see in silhouette and know exactly who it is.
Him and Darth Vader, basically.
Yeah. Or R2-D2 and C-3PO, I suppose. Or Batman.
Or Mickey.
Or the Elephant Man.
So, yeah, poor point made there, actually. But no, you know who I mean. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. If they ever attempt to make that again without Harrison Ford, I don't think it would work. I don't think
They don't try and make it again with Harrison.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's been put on hold, and I don't think that will happen now, will it? I mean, they were all signed up to do another movie, but
Too old when they did
Crystal Skull.
When was that? It was 2008, wasn't it? So that's 12 years ago.
I think they put him in carbonite until he's ready to start shooting.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, he's three real characters. For me, he's Indiana Jones, he's Han Solo, and he's Deckard from Blade Runner. That was his peak for me. That is Harrison Ford. And the thing is, they are three completely separate characters. And you buy into the three completely separate characters. It's not an actor being to me, it is three completely separate.
Well, I'd say there's a fair bit of is there not a fair bit of crossover between Jones and Solo?
Yeah.
The kind of rogue, the kind of wry smile, the roguish adventurer kind of thing.
Although, ironically, he was not first choice for Indiana Jones.
No, he wasn't.
It was
No,
Tom Selleck.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it because he was stuck in his contract with Magnum PI.
Iconic in its own way.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine. I'm glad they didn't go with Tom Selleck because I think the moustache would have been distracting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can't imagine
too
anyone
erotic.
but Harrison Ford playing it now.
Yeah, well, it's like Marty McFly, isn't it? In Back to the Future. It would have been a completely different film just looking at the cutscenes that were there.
Have you ever seen any of the interviews of people about working with Eric Stoltz?
Yeah.
He does not come out of it well. Apparently, he was going full method, and it's like some of the stuff that the guy that plays Biff Tannen says is very funny, and he's basically I was not a fan.
Yeah. So anyway, that's me done because for me, that was his peak. He's a good actor, but I don't think he's done anything since then. Controversial? I don't know, but I don't think he's done.
I don't know. I think. I mean, he's done a lot of different films, but and those are the three you mentioned are his iconic roles, but they're also iconic films. But he'll never really be forgotten for other things as well. Like for my money, he's the best Jack Ryan. And I think he was really good in his Jack Ryan roles, and I'd have loved him to do another one.
In particular.
Second one, yeah.
Games,
no, but the second
one was a really good film.
He was a great Jack Ryan even in Patriot Games, irrespective of the story. And in Clear and Present Danger, I mean, he absolutely nailed the concept of this guy who was just an analyst, never picked up a gun, and was put into these crazy situations. And I thought he was tremendous in that. And I also have a soft spot for The Fugitive. It's cheesy and it's corny, but him and Tommy Lee Jones, I mean, they're perfectly cast.
I thought that was the case because you put it twice in the list.
Yeah, that's how much I liked it. But I'll always remember him for those two, on top of the ones you mentioned. And he's done a few more worthy films, because I remember not liking The Mosquito Coast, because I definitely went through a phase where I didn't like anything too tragic, and it's quite a tough journey. But he's very good as this obsessive character in The Mosquito Coast. You can really buy into this guy who wants to live a certain way at any expense, including his family's and his own sanity. But I thought that was really good performance as well. But he'll always be remembered for the three you mentioned, Phil. I'm just noting there are a few others he's done which are a lot of fun, but definitely looking at his filmography in the last few years, it's been hard to see anything apart from his Return to Deckard as worthy of.
That was the last time he actually did any acting.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. Yes,
He's still got it though in Force Awakens. He's still a good Han Solo.
He is.
Yeah, but he's just Harrison Ford.
Yes, he's relied a lot on being Harrison Ford, as you say. But I think in the second Blade Runner film, he actually was called upon to care a little bit, particularly in the Rachel scene. I thought that was quite well done.
I think he's what I was trying to get at as well as not only his iconic roles, but back in the early to mid 80s, that was probably his peak of his abilities, I think, because you've also got Witness in there, which he was particularly good in that as well. It wasn't a great film, but in terms of acting and so on. But after that, I'm trying to think, because after that he seems to fit a mould.
There's one thing that's sticking out, and I'm not going to suggest for a second that it merits direct comparison to his work in Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but he genuinely played against type. Have any of you watched Morning Glory? He's really funny in that, properly hilarious, and it sort of is because he's being allowed to be Harrison Ford, but he's not. It's again, in terms of his standard habit of phoning it in for most of the 21st century, that is a rare moment where there's a creation on screen which is it's quite engaging to watch. I'm not going to suggest for a second it's a vintage film. It's not, but he is very good in it. I would also go right back to the beginning and say he doesn't have a huge role in American Graffiti, but he's excellent in it. And then he's also in Apocalypse Now. He doesn't do very much, but it's nice he's in Apocalypse Now. It's one of my favourite
He's
films.
in the conversation.
He's really young in Apocalypse Now.
Not as young as he is in American Graffiti.
Oh no, he's the same age as he is in Star Wars.
I know, but he
Was
just
Apocalypse
shot in
Now
76.
was Apocalypse Now before the conversation?
No, after. Conversation was 70.
Yeah, because he was very young in that.
75. Again, he wasn't actually that young. I mean, he was in his 30s at that point.
I mean, obviously, kind of, if you're talking kind of best, for me, Blade Runner, just because I think his kind of style of mixing kind of charisma with a bit of a kind of jaded personality, it kind of fit the kind of gumshoe style, you know, kind of neo-noir genre very well. But beyond that, you know, I think as far as favourites go, other than the big ones, I do really have a soft spot for The Fugitive, just because it's one of those few roles where he can't play in any way on kind of any aspect of what he kind of cultivated with Han Solo or with Indiana Jones, with that kind of roguish nature. It's, you know, it's purely just a haunted individual. Yeah, and it's a bit cheesy, it's a bit corny, but I think he's one of those actors who kind of he kind of fits genre fare very well. He's kind of one of the last proper film stars, kind of almost like someone from like the 30s or 40s studio system, where they fit a particular style of film really well, almost like a kind of pre-method style actor. But, you know, when you've got the good roles, then, you know, you end up with something absolutely iconic, like with Indiana Jones, to the point where you can't imagine it being anyone else, where you can think that it would still have been a good film, but you can't imagine the character as anyone else, and you would rather see it retired than see that mantle handed over in a kind of Bond fashion or anything like that.
Yeah, it seems amazing to me to think back that Lucas didn't want to cast him as Han Solo, partly because he didn't want to cast anyone from American Graffiti. But he's just, you can't imagine. I mean, I know people like Christopher Walken was in the running, you know, like, God, no, Star Wars wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for Harrison Ford. And the same goes for Indiana Jones. Again, I can't imagine Tom Selleck in the part. I can't imagine anyone but Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones now.
See, I think he actually grows into the Solo role more.
Yeah.
You watch Empire, and he's really confident in it. I think in some of the scenes in, we obviously have to call it A New Hope now, but
No, we don't. Star Wars.
No, in Star Wars, you almost see a little bit of friction with Jesus. I have to say this line. You know, George Lucas's. Some of the lines were just a little bit. You know, it was kind of sci-fi space.
You were
opera
taking it more
kind of,
seriously by Empire because all those paychecks started coming in.
Yeah,
Hang on a
Because
second.
Alec Guinness had already been granted that privilege for the first one, so you know.
yeah.
Well, he was the only one of the three who didn't sign a three film contract, so he hadn't bought the bollocks. I'm sure that Harrison Ford did extremely well out of Empire and Jedi because they had to have him, really. That's why they froze him in Empire, because they weren't sure they'd get him back for Jedi.
Well, there you go.
I'm surprised no one's mentioned Air Force One. I love Air Force One. Guilty pleasure.
I would say it's an interesting kind of addition to his Jack Ryan films, because of course he plays the president in it, and Jack Ryan becomes the president in the Clancy verse. So I always thought if he did another one, it would look a little bit like Air Force One, and I quite like it for that.
Oh my God!
But
now I want Marvel to do the Clancy verse.
It's very cheesy.
I mean, not least because Red Storm Rising would need a bit of money on screen, wouldn't it?
I think the idea of Harrison Ford as the president just goes back to a simpler time when they actually cast competent people in a role that isn't even occupied by a competent person in reality. I'm going to go. This is my because he plays totally against type in it. I really like him in What Lies Beneath because he's the villain, and I don't think he's very often played the villain, if ever.
Spoiler.
Off, he's 20 years old. You haven't seen it by now.
I've seen it a few times, but yeah.
Yeah, but he plays against type, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He does.
I think he's really good in that. So he actually puts in a proper performance.
I think the bath scene in that is still
He's fantastic in the bath.
exceptionally good. But
So
yeah,
that's not Blu-ray. It's really annoying because I really like that film. It's really scary.
yeah,
I can't believe that Zemeckis knocked it off whilst he was waiting for Tom Hanks to lose all the weight for the second block of filming on Castaway.
But yeah, he is a proper old school star. I think he gets away with a lot of performances where he just gets to be Harrison Ford.
Yeah, well, as I say, Blade Runner was the last time there was any. I mean, the sequences when he's with Jared Leto, no spoilers. There was some evidence of acting going on there, and it was notable because I hadn't seen that in a long time from him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. Last week we were being guarded in our praise for Keanu Reeves because yes, he's not exactly a scenery chewing, thespian maestro, but nevertheless, he's still turning in stuff where there's perhaps more evidence of, at least some evidence attempt to be a character than some late period Ford work. So
I think it would be fair to say that late period Ford could perhaps be equated to kind of late period De Niro, I think he has done a lot of films where you look at it and you go, this is either going to be worthy of my time or I'm going to resent it at the end of 2 hours.
Yes, I think that's fair.
But De Niro's a whole other level. I mean, that's
De Niro at one point was getting on for Nicolas Cage levels of just looking at the script and going, yep.
The film where he did Righteous Kill, where he reunited with Al Pacino, that was probably the nail in the coffin for me because I really defended a lot of his later works, and then he teamed up with Pacino for the first time since Heat, and they're both cops again, and they're just wearing Hawaiian shirts and shooting machine guns in a montage, and it's one of the worst scripted, thought out, acted films you could imagine putting those two in. They must have just said, here's a couple of shirts and a couple of guns, do what you like for a couple of hours.
A few million quid.
It's abysmal, and it just, if you compare that to Heat, I mean, because that's the last time they were together, and it's just shocking.
Yeah, I mean, it gets to that point in a lot of these people's careers where they do something so many times and so often that it just becomes, easy for them just to phone it in like we do every single week on the podcast. You don't need a running order or anything like that. We just wing it, and you're going to see how badly we wing it when we move to video.
without the ability to edit out the content.
Yeah, you're in for a shocker. Right, so yeah, don't forget that. That's Thursday evening, 7:15 on our AVForums podcast channel. The first ever video, probably the last. It may be.
This could well be our Star Wars holiday special, people. And if that doesn't encourage you to tune in and see what the hell happens, I don't know what will.
Well, you see, this is like I say, this is habit. This is easy. You can have long pauses and all the rest of it when you're doing something live. It could be quite entertaining and interesting. Let's just leave it at that. So yeah, that's it for this week. My thanks to Ed Selley.
Fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.
Kaz Harlow.
Welcome home, old boy.
Steve Withers.
No time for love, Dr. Jones.
And Mark Botwright.
Spit it out. I'm sorry, has Charlie Chan joined this podcast?
Is that racially insensitive? I don't know. You're just doing an impression
Some
of
of his lines.
That film.
That's no cookie.
That film is staggeringly racist and would not get made now. The whole banquet sequence is outrageous. That
was supposed to be a joke, apparently.
I know, but it's not funny because
that sounds like one of those excuses you make after the fact. Oh no, that was a knowing joke. Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
I was being sarcastic, yeah.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and video. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, head over and check out our YouTube channel for videos of the latest reviews. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.